Reports were released early this morning that Scott Frost and Nebraska Football are under NCAA investigation, reportedly because the Huskers allegedly used analysts and consultants improperly during practices and games. I'm going to read an article by Sports Illustrated and then read a more interesting one by 24/7 Sports before closing out here. I really haven't had much time to collect my thoughts on this. I don't really think anyone has. There isn't too much news surrounding this yet, but I do think it is interesting. Nebraska football just can't have a quiet off-season. I'm now reading the article here. According to Brett McMurphy of the Action Network, the Husker football program and head coach Scott Frost are under NCAA investigation for improper use of analysts and consultants during practices and games. McMurphy's report also says Nebraska moved workouts to an, quote, to an undisclosed off-campus location last year when the NCAA had shut down all workouts due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's unknown whether that is part of the investigation. McMurphy points out that both Jonathan Rutledge and Chief of Staff Gerard Lambrecht left the program in the past 8 months, but it is unknown if those decisions were related to the investigation. One possible penalty would be the suspension of Frost for an unknown number of games, but that is interesting because the Huskers literally open in 10 days at Illinois. Nebraska has been working collaboratively with the NCAA to review a matter concerning our football program, said athletic director Trev Alberts in a release. And Frost also said that he did everything during the COVID pandemic when the workouts were closed to benefit the team's health and safety, and everything they did was approved by the athletic department and like all of that, which is interesting because he didn't necessarily deny that it happened, but he said it was approved and he did it for the health and benefit of all that. And I mean, I don't know the exact rules. Like, I don't know if the team just couldn't work out on campus. Maybe it was like, I don't really know. I know that group gatherings were practically banned across the nation. So I really don't know that if they worked out off campus what the punishments would be or how badly that'd be taken. I don't have any power or anything, obviously, but I don't think that should be as big of a deal, the workout part, as the analyst deal. And I don't even think that should be a big part either. Going back to the article, also in McMurphy's report is more information on the Oklahoma scheduling debacle that dominated headlines earlier this year. McMurphy names Scott Frost and Lambrecht as key proponents of NU trying to get out of the game, which is contrary to the popular belief that former athletic director Bill Moose was the one leading the charge. Frost said Wednesday that he hadn't made a single phone call regarding the schedule. Honestly, I look at Frost, just from what I know about him and how people have said before, it can kind of come across as bold and arrogant. I would not expect him to be the one trying to get out of that game. He's a Nebraska alum himself. That rivalry game was a thing back then. If Frost has any kind of dignity, just within the sport, even if he has no dignity and it's his only good part of him is in football, I couldn't imagine him trying to back out of that game. The athletic director, on the other hand, I think that's more likely. The athletic department would want to get another win or two out of the season, get back to more closer to their winning ways, even with a weaker strength of schedule. Frost just doesn't kind of seem, to me at least, with my limited knowledge, as that type of person. Alberts became the athletic director after Moose's abrupt departure earlier this summer. This will be the first notable incident for Alberts to handle as the head of Nebraska's athletic department. And really, I mean, I don't really know what to say here. I'm just reporting stuff and reporting what I'm reading because there just isn't much out right now. I'm shocked. Again, I kind of find this interesting as Baylor can get away with covering up like I believe, next to known rapes by their players raping and abusing people, but then Nebraska gets caught under the NCAA's boot for using analysts quote improperly, and also moving workouts away when they were banned, but possibly to a location that might have been pretty safe. This just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think there should be any sort of severe punishment if Nebraska is guilty of all of these findings. Now I'm going to read one more article, and it's Nebraska Football NCAA Investigation is the title. Rick Neuheisel says Huskers, quote, outed themselves. Now, Rick Neuheisel was the head coach at Washington, Colorado, and UCLA, all current Pac-12 schools. He coached in the Big 8, though, and I believe the Big 12 as well under Colorado before they moved long ago, I believe. He did have to deal with NCAA investigations himself and all that stuff, and really hasn't had a whole ton of success at programs. So in that sense, at the moment, with the exception of Frost at UCF, he kind of, I think, has an interesting lens into this situation. And Rick Neuheisel did say they have decided they would rather go in another direction. They've outed themselves, and basically Neuheisel goes on to say that they're trying to get around Frost's contract so they don't have to pay him $20 million when they fire him after they get around his contract, if this works. That's what he's saying. Now, this is pretty extreme, and this kind of is conspiracy theory-esque, but we've seen this before in Nebraska. Frank Solich was fired for putting Nebraska in quote-unquote mediocrity, and it was rumored that he had some, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but he had some off-field issues. There's been rumors that I've heard of about that are interesting. He had some off-field issues that the university covered up pretty well, and they covered it up by basically saying that he's not winning us enough games, he needs to be fired. And that's not exactly the same, it's not even close, but Nebraska's done this they've outed coaches for they say they oust them for one reason, they actually ousted them for another. It's been done with Solich. Pelini, I think it's been done with him too. They kind of fired him. Some said because he just wasn't winning enough, and in reality, a huge part of the reason they fired Pelini is because Pelini just had a hot mouth, couldn't stop talking, couldn't stop cussing, and didn't say things that Nebraska wanted him to say. He just couldn't keep his mouth shut. So Nebraska has done this before, and I'm not trying to be cruel against Nebraska fans here or anything. I'm just speaking that what I've heard, what I've read, and what I think are facts. But this is interesting, and if you're a Nebraska fan, I feel bad for you, because I thought that this year, year number 4, Frost's defense finally stepped up last year during an all Big Ten schedule. Keep in mind, Nebraska had a far better defense last year with a far harder schedule. You had no weak non-conference opponents to play against. You had those, you might have been 6-6 and went bowling, maybe even 7-5 if you could have gotten some crowd noise to support you, if you know what I mean, and had some of those practices. Because Scott Frost was really, he was against the entire shutdown, and by shutdown I mean the shutting down of Big Ten football. He really wanted to play that year, and this year I'm a believer in Nebraska football. I think they're going 6-6 and going bowling, and maybe they'll go higher. And I think that if he has a winning record this year, he should be kept around one more year. And many of you Nebraska fans brought up in one of my earlier videos, he's building this team correctly, and I think for now he is. That's all I have to say today. If you like this video, this report, remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this whole interesting debacle below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.